Hey everyone, my name is Thasvindran. In this video, I'll be talking about my final year project for my ESM presentation 2. My project is a e-wallet specifically catered to UTeM's needs. It is UTeM e-wallet. I know, very creative name. This application is aimed to create a alternative payment method which is more efficient, faster and easy to use, and they can be used in most of the point of sales places or to perform any kind of transactions really in UTeM. Now let's take a look at the slides. Introduction, I just gave you the introductions. Now the problem statements, I've already briefly explained this in my first presentation. Let's just go over it once more. Traditional transactions require more time. This is referring to the traditional method, which is using cash. Acquiring the cash itself is a big process. You have to go to ATM and then get the money and then go to store, wait in line, queue and buy a few things. There are no proper documentation for small businesses in UTeM. For instance, you know the shops in front of our labs, the small shops, small business owners, they don't have proper documentation, and also self-checkout store doesn't exist in UTeM. This MCO time, the Corona time, is the great time to implement self-checkout stores. This is because you can just walk into a store, get your things you need, pay directly, and then you can get home and avoid crowded places. Objectives of the system is to introduce a more convenient alternative payment method using digitizing the currency. Digitizing the currency will make any transactions easier. To create a mobile application that automates and digitizes shopping processes in UTeM. To create a mobile application to aid financial management for small businesses. In this application, I've also added feature for small business owners to start their own store, and create a name for themselves in the entrepreneurial space. Now let's talk about the development process of this application. First of all, this is a mobile application developed in Android Studio. Android Studio is the best place to develop a mobile application. It is provided by the first party, Google themselves. It has great features such as built-in emulators, great typing experience. It auto-completes your words and everything. Next one is Visual Studio Code. This is used mainly to develop the backend of the admin dashboard and also the APIs for the mobile application to communicate with the server. And speaking of server, the Apache and MySQL server is running on XAMPP on my laptop over there. All the devices that I tested on is connected to the same network, which is my Wi-Fi, and XAMPP acts as a local area network so that all the devices connected to the network can access the database in my PC. And lastly, Postman. Postman is a great piece of software used to test APIs, Postman enables us to send and receive, get and post requests, which you can't do using normal browsers. For you to send a post request, you need to have a form. You can't afford to create a form every time you want to test something, so Postman comes great handy in the development process of this application. Now let's talk about the languages that I use to develop this application. First off, mobile application, so Java is a must. All the functions handled in the mobile application is developed using Java, and PHP is used to develop the backend of the admin dashboard, and also all the APIs that handle the get request, handle the request and response for the mobile application. SQL for database, HTML and XML is used to develop interfaces. HTML for the UI of the dashboard, and XML for the UI of the mobile application. Now let's talk about the architecture of this mobile application. This mobile application runs on a 4-tier architecture. First is users or client tier, which is our mobile application. Second one is presentation, which is our APIs. API sends and receives responses and requests from the mobile application client, and the business logic is handled by the backend processing, where all the heavy lifting, all the major functions takes place. So the mobile application is a very light client. It doesn't handle any of the sorting or processing data or anything. Everything happens in the backend and sent to the API. Only the most useful things is sent, not necessarily not unnecessary data to reduce the data traffic and also improve performance. And lastly, data access is database. My database is MySQL, as I told you, and the database management software I used is SQL, which I forgot to mention in the previous slide. But SQL is a database management software, which is a pretty good application to have in your arsenal when developing using MySQL. It has all the features such as creating databases, updating databases, and viewing changes in real time. Enough with the presentation. Now let's take a look at a practical demo of how this application will be used in real life and show you some practical usage of this application.
Hello again. Sorry for the bad quality. I'm using my phone for my presentation and I'm using my old phone to record. So in this demo we have here a virtual phone running on my laptop, and I have my phone running an instance of my application. I've already logged in. If you want to view all the functions in details, I've already explained it in my previous video, link in description. Now let's go over briefly on all the functions. First of all, we have in the home page all the news and events which we can click and go directly to the source page, which is really helpful if you want to keep the students up to date on what's going on in our university. And also up here we have shop, where we can view all the items that are available in our university's facility. We can view the items, we can view the items in details, add them to cart, things like that. And transfer is a function where you can send fund to other accounts, for instance for a friend, to pay in for a club, or as an entry fees, something like that. So let's say a demo here. I have an account here for a karate club 358079. If the account number exists, it will forward you to the transactions page, and if the account number is invalid, it will show you the account doesn't exist. So here we can add amount, description will be anything, and from here you can actually select which account you want to pay from. So for this instance, I have couple accounts, my account and also math club. I'm using my account to transfer, and it will ask for an authentication before making any transactions. If it succeeds, it will forward you to the transaction success page, where you can complete the transaction, and it will forward you to your account summary page, where if you see we've sent $20 to the other account. And next to that you have accounts, where you can view all the accounts and also add new account if you wanna. And here we have a great function called scan. Say hi. This function is used as a self-checkout system, as I said earlier in the presentation, where users can just walk in, scan the items they want, pay directly, and get home. For instance, we have a demo here. We have a Coco Crunch box with a QR code added to it, and when you scan it, it will directly take you to the items page. This I think would be very useful for items useful for small business owners where they don't necessarily be in the store 24/7. For instance, like the printing shop in our UTeM, where students can just walk in, print how many ever page they want, and then just add number of pages and add that and pay directly and get back. So if you see in cart here, we have the item added, we can pay, same thing. Next we have Saman, where users can check if they have Saman in their matrix number. For instance, B03, here's mine, let's search. or I have two summons, one for parking offense and one for library overdue. Let's pay library overdue for now from my account pay. So all the transactions happen in the same order. You have to have enough balance and authenticate before the system confirms your transaction. If any of those fails, your transaction would not go through. Let's check again. So now we only have one saman left. Next up is my store. This is intended for the small business owners to start their own businesses. Here I've already set up my own store. If account is newly created, hitting my store would forward them to create a new store where they can choose their names and also the account that is linked with their store, and also we can add items up here. Now we've roughly seen what the system can do. Now let's take a look at how the system does what it does. We'll go into the coding and how it handles stuff in the backend. Hello again, but this time from my PC. Here we have a function, check summon function, and the consequent functions of that. I chose this function to demo because this function encompasses all the elements I used to develop this application in one single function. So as all functions starts, we start with a UI. UI in Android Studio can be developed using two methods. One is hard coding it, or you have an option to drag and drop stuff over here. I prefer hard coding it because dragging and dropping would create some errors in the long run, and it is a good practice just to know what you are creating. So once you've created all the functions, you have to give them a unique ID, which should be declared in the UI's function page. So here I've created a button and I've added an on click listener. Once the search button is pressed, get matrix number function is called. This function is how the UI, how the mobile application sends and receives a response from the server or APIs. So here we have the request sending to URL check if someone exists. So this URL is a constant throughout the application. So we have multiple more, not multiple, but a lot more APIs, all with unique addresses that the mobile application makes requests to get the information from. For instance, we have here login, delete cart items, add to cart, log saman payment, or things like that. All these have different functions. So here we are making a request for this function. Here we are making the request to the function and try catching if there are any errors. So if the API exists and the function and the request handler can reach the API, it is technically a success. So here we are catching the response. We are retrieving the response of the API in a JSON format and getting the information here. So what happens after we send the URL here? So this URL is check if someone exists. So this API corresponds to this function in the database. So this API only accepts a post request and also a parameter, which is matrix number. If both of these are not fulfilled, the API won't run. For testing this is where Postman comes in. So Postman is a great API where we can add our own body or attach values to a post request, and we send it. We say it says invalid values because the data we send is not the data the system is expecting, the API is expecting. So once we give the API the correct parameters, only then it will run. So here, for instance, it says error is false, which means there are no errors, and the message is data found. So if we give it a wrong matrix number, it will say error is true, which means the given matrix number does not have any data found, and it also attaches a description as a message saying no data found. This will be displayed in the user interface. So now let's take a look at how the response is generated. So once the function receives a request, it creates a new database operation and calls the function get matrix number data, and sends in the matrix number that user inputted as a parameter. So here we have to find this function here, line 2388. So from these are all the functions that exist to run this application. Here we have login user, get matrix number, get user by name, check if account exists, and a lot more. All these functions are used to run the application properly. So back to this function, here is where the SQL query happens and returns the data, if exists, of course, back to the API here, or the presentation layer, should I say. Here, if the data is not found, if the data is null or not found, it shows there is an error. Else, it creates the username, matrix number, and cost for the response and sends it back to the API. So I hope this gives you some idea of how the data is handled in the backend of the application of UTeM e-wallet application. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask me. And again, thank you for watching, and hopefully you can understand this presentation of mine. Thank you.